there are still more people joining, but we can go ahead and get started. I don't know if Supervisor Palchik is here, if she wants to make some opening remarks.
Yeah, Aaron, I didn't see her on the call, but I did see Devin with the Providence
Okay.
District Office. I don't know, Devin, if you're there, do you know if Supervisor Palchik is going to be joining us tonight, or if you had anything you wanted to convey before we get started?
I don't think that Supervisor Palchik can make it. However, that is because we have multiple meetings going on, including another in her district, as well as a planning commission meeting. But I will say that, she's interested to see what's being presented and to hear from the community. She wants to know kind of how this is, what questions this raises and what sort of concerns that the residents around basically the community in which our office is located feel about this. So we're eager to hear more.
Great, thank you. So I'm Aaron Kleibanner with the Department of Planning and Development, and with me tonight is also Graham Owen with DPD. And then representing the property owners, we have Mike Van Atta and Scott Adams. We also have a number of county staff on the call tonight as well. So basically, here's the agenda. The presentation will have a Planning 101 segment to it. Then we'll talk about the plan amendment, site-specific plan amendment process briefly in the context of that. We'll go over the board authorization for this plan amendment and talk about existing conditions on the site and what the adopted comprehensive plan recommends at the current time. And then we'll go over the proposed plans from the property owners, and then we'll talk about staff considerations that we've identified so far with our county partner agencies, and then we'll go through the schedule, the project schedule. So just some housekeeping items. If please remain on mute unless you raise your hand to speak, and you can under the participants panel, but also in those three little dots on the bottom where it says more, you can find the raise hand feature in there. And then also if you need translation, or you can also get closed captioning of the meeting as well down there. And feel free to put any questions you have in the chat at any time. And we'll get to those towards the end of the presentation. I think we'll hold questions to the end. I may ask for questions briefly at each separate segment of the presentation, but most of the questions hopefully we'll keep to the end. And I believe that's it for housekeeping. So to provide a sense of where the project is in terms of the overall county development process, this diagram illustrates the cyclical nature of the land development process in the county. And so it begins with a concept phase in yellow there. And this concept was first submitted as a nomination in the site-specific plan amendment process last year. It went through an initial screening phase, and then there were a series of community meetings and a workshop with the Planning Commission to determine whether it should be advanced to the formal planning phase and get on the comprehensive plan amendment work program. And that was, and then the study was authorized for review and put on the work program in November 2023. By the board. So we're now in the green area there, the planning and zoning review phase. And the comprehensive plan and the zoning entitlement processes or phases are really the first steps in what can be a year-long process, depending on the complexity of a case. So the plan itself is a guide for decision making about the built environment and natural environment, and it reflects the community's long-term vision for the future. And the purpose of the plan is to manage growth and development, balance the preservation of other resources such as environmental and heritage resources. And growth, brings both benefits and challenges in terms of land use, housing, and transportation. And the plan is also legally required by the Commonwealth of Virginia. Every locality has to have one. However, it is important to note that the plan provides recommendations and is not the law like the zoning ordinance. And the recommendations in the plan are used by the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, county staff, and the community as the common basis for decision-making on land use applications. And it's a living document. We're making changes to it all the time, and those changes are called plan amendments. So basically, the comprehensive plan is divided into three basic parts. The first part is the policy plan volume, and this contains countywide policies and objectives on 11 broad topics, such as land use, transportation, the environment, public facilities, housing, economic development, and others. And then the second part are the area plan volumes, which divides the county into 4 geographic areas and contains elements intended to implement the policy plan at a more detailed level. The area plans are further broken down into different geographies, planning districts, community planning sectors, and special areas. And we'll be talking about one of those special areas tonight, which is the Vienna Transit Station area. And in many cases within these areas, there are site-specific language or site-specific recommendations that you don't see on the comprehensive plan map. And that sort of segues into the third element of the comprehensive plan, which are these series of maps, and again, including that comprehensive land use map. There's also a transportation map, trails plan map, and bicycle network map, among others. So one of the most important elements of the comprehensive plan is the map on this slide, which is called the Concept for Future Development. It's the overarching guide for the area plans. And the concept's policy direction is in the area plans, which is illustrated on the map, is for almost all future growth, I should say, and development to occur within designated mixed use centers. And there are a number of land classifications shown on the map that embody these different types of mixed use centers. Again, the ones that are most important that we're going to talk about tonight are the transit station areas. And I've circled the Vienna transit station area in red there. This contains the Vienna Metro Rail station, and all of the transit station areas are basically centered on the Metro Rail stations. Areas outside of the mixed use centers, such as the yellow area, which is the suburban neighborhood classification, and the green area, which are the low density residential areas of the county, are areas where little to no change is planned. So this slide is again showing the Vienna transit station area, one of those special areas or mixed use centers. It's the area highlighted in brown there, that entire area north and south of Route 66 and north of Route 29 encompasses the transit station area. I've highlighted the subject area here in blue, and then you can also see the Metro Rail station right up along 66 here in the middle. So there's a variety of common terms that we use in the comprehensive plan. Two of the most common terms are density and intensity, and this refers to the amount or how much development there is on a site. And so first, let's talk about residential density. And this is, we use a measure called dwelling units per acre. Basically, fewer dwelling units per acre is a less dense development. And for example, a single family detached dwelling is often located in a 1 to 2 or 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre area, and it's considered low density development. Townhouses are often at higher densities, and multifamily residential development is even at a higher density of 12 or more dwelling units per acre. And so on the slide here, this is illustrating the range of some of these different densities and what they would look like. So this is intensity. This is non-residential development. And the mathematical measure we use here is called floor area ratio, which is basically obtained by dividing the floor area of the buildings by the land area that it sits on. And mixed use communities containing both residential and non-residential uses are also identified by a maximum floor area ratio. So similar to density, the lower the number, the less intense or less amount of development there is. And the higher the number, the more. So for example, here around the Vienna Metro Rail station, you might find a lot of development that is planned for a 1.0 floor area ratio. So this is illustrating that. And this is using a building size that is equal to its parcel, 100,000 square feet. So you get a 1.0 FAR here. However, what this is also illustrating is that the intensity can take different forms on the ground. So it can be either like a high-rise development, as it's illustrating there, and cover only a portion of the lot that it sits on, or it can take up a large area of the lot and be a more of a low slung, low-rise building, but it can still be a very massive building. So again, this slide is kind of illustrating the range of some different common intensities you'll see. Again, so auto-oriented retail on the left end of the range here, such as the nearby Pan Am Shopping Center, is planned for a 0.35 FAR. But then pedestrian-oriented mixed-use developments with structured parking, which fall under like the medium category, is more like the 1.0 FAR that we just illustrated. And then really urban transit station areas with high-rise construction can reach over a 3 FAR. So as I noted earlier, the plan is a guide, it is not the law, and it provides recommendations about land use, transportation, environment, and other topics in a general way. The plan is implemented through zoning, which is the law, and where more specific standards can be found, such as regulations for setbacks, open space, building height, and explicit uses. Changes to the zoning map are requested through the redevelopment process, and during this process, proposals are evaluated for conformance with the recommendations in the comprehensive plan. So much of the work that the Department of Planning and Development does relies on outreach and coordination with the community and elected and appointed officials. Whether it's a comprehensive plan amendment or a zoning ordinance amendment or a rezoning application, a large part of our job really is ensuring that the community is fully aware of any proposed changes, and we solicit your input and incorporate it in a meaningful way. There are different ways that citizens can participate in these processes. again, so we're now in the site-specific plan amendment process, and that's how this project got onto our comprehensive plan amendment work program, as I mentioned earlier. And during that, community members can sit on standing land use committees. These are appointed by in some of the magisterial districts. Another way is that a supervisor also may appoint a task force, a citizens task force, for larger area studies usually, or for an area that has a lot of amendments to consider. Or we just have general community meetings like this one where we invite anyone and everyone. So when we're doing the review of the plan amendments, we ask how should a site develop in the future, and staff considers many things. So we look what are the benefits and the impacts to the community, and the review involves staff from many different agencies with many different areas of expertise. And so as a coordinator for the review of a plan amendment, it's my job to gather comments from all those agencies to consider when a plan amendment, when evaluating plan amendment, and again, using those to develop draft plan recommendations. But of course, the most important component also is the public input that we get in those developing those recommendations. So now I'll just introduce the proposed plan amendment, the Hunters Branch Office Complex. So, whoops, pardon me. Okay, so I mentioned before that this project got onto our comprehensive plan amendment work program through a board authorization. Basically, that's when the board basically says to staff, please evaluate a plan amendment that considers these things on this particular property. So, so for the tax map parcels of the subject area of the Hunters Branch Office Complex Amendment, what was authorized, it was originally authorized in April of 2023, and we have a system, a tiering system, 1, 2, 3, where because staff has limited resources, we have to organize when each of the amendments get reviewed. So tier ones are the most pressing and would address the most important county policies. So we put those first. Tier twos might have a concurrent rezoning application with them. We put those second, and then tier threes are at the bottom, and we'll start working on those when other projects are completed and or when other studies or steps need to be taken to start evaluating a particular project. So this was originally authorized as a tier 3, again, back in April of 2023. And it considered multifamily residential use, or I'm sorry, the mix of uses at that time was not fully ready to go. So this was deferred by the Planning Commission. And then the property owner was reauthorized in November of 2023. There was a new developer partner with the property owner, and they reformulated the proposal for multifamily and townhouse residential uses, and also submitted a concurrent rezoning application. So this was reactivated for review. And then as far as in addition to the uses, some additional considerations in the authorization were that staff should evaluate possibly adaptive reuse of the existing office buildings or redevelopment of the entire site. And then also pedestrian bicycle connections and things of that nature to the surrounding uses, including the Vienna Metro Rail Station, the Pan Am Shopping Center, and other nearby destinations. So looking at the existing conditions, the approximately 14-acre subject area, again, is named as the Hunters Branch Office Complex, and developed with the two 12-story office buildings, which total 444,000 square feet and are served by two parking structures, and is an approximately 7 to 10-minute walk from the Vienna Metro Rail station platform. And this can be accessed through Hunters Glen Way, but much of the sidewalk, or some of the sidewalk frontage on Hunters Glen Way, is missing. That's something to note. Hunters Branch tributary also runs through the eastern side of the site from south to north and provides a wooded stream valley with walking trails, including in a tunnel under Hermosa Drive. There are also footings for a pedestrian bridge over the stream, but the bridge is no longer there. And the surrounding uses to the east across Nutley Street are single-family detached homes in the Briarwood neighborhood. To the south is the Pan Am Shopping Center and other drive-through retail uses, single-family attached uses in the Metro Row townhomes, and to the west are multifamily uses, and also to the north, and wooded land as well to the north. And I should note here that on the east side of Nutley Street here, on this island of land between Nutley and Old Nutley, these are remnant parcels that were created when Nutley Street came in. They're still part of the subject area, but nothing is planned for these in this project. So again, the Vienna Metro Rail station or transit station area is one of the 14 mixed-use areas in the county, and these areas are planned to develop in a manner that is compatible with surrounding uses and to provide transit-focused housing and employment locations. And in the concept for future development, these areas also provide the opportunity for non-automobile dependent development to occur in a manner, again, that is a manner that's compatible with existing and nearby uses. And the subject area of the plan amendment is within Land Unit A, shown on the map here of the station area. And this map is also showing that the transit station area is divided into a number of land units, A through I. So just keep that in mind. Now, the adopted plan for the recommendations for the site are for multifamily. Well, there are two things which I should have explained before. There's a base plan, and sometimes there are options for higher intensity development in the area plan volumes. So the comprehensive plan map really shows our base plan, and then in the comprehensive plan volumes, you'll have more detailed recommendations, including options for higher density development. So this subject area has both of those. So the base plan is for multi-residential uses and office use up to a 0.50 floor area ratio. And then there is an option for elderly housing, elderly care facilities, hotel, motel use, and health and recreation facilities. Now, what I should mention is that the current plan recommendations have either already been implemented or are really no longer relevant. And the reasons are that the residential recommendations have been implemented by the surrounding multifamily apartments that surround the subject site. That's one thing. But the existing office buildings were constructed prior to this plan guidance being added to the plan. So they really precluded any of the non-residential development in the optional uses. So it's just, so what you'll see later is that for our analysis, we're comparing the impacts of the proposed plan to actually the existing uses, to the two office buildings, not what's not what the adopted recommendations are in the comprehensive plan, because those are really no longer relevant. So the proposed plan amendment was submitted with two options. Option A included 2 multifamily buildings for a total of 800 dwelling units, or up to 800,000 square feet. And this works out to a proposed density, of about 57.6 dwelling units per acre and 1.31 FAR. And the larger of the existing parking structures would be retained to serve the proposed residential use. The existing resource protection area, again, the eastern third of the site, the floodplain and the stream valley, are proposed to be preserved and programmed as a passive recreation area. A publicly accessible resource-based park is also planned for the corner of Route 29 and Nutley Street. And there are also additional open spaces planned around the development to serve the new residents of the development. Option B proposes 1 multifamily building with approximately 450 dwelling units and 76 stacked townhomes, with a total of 536 dwelling units and approximately 616,000 square feet of development. Option B includes the same features for parking and open spaces as option A. So for a more detailed look at the proposal, I will now turn the presentation over to the property owner's representative, and then we'll come back with some considerations.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Aaron, and good evening to everyone. Really appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time this evening. I'm Scott Adams. I'm a land use attorney with McGuire Woods, and really happy to be here tonight to talk to you about the proposal that we've put in for this site. I guess building upon Aaron's presentation, he really covered the comprehensive plan and the SSPA process, which provides the guide for how development should occur. And I think our part of the presentation tonight is really focused on the zoning aspect, where you get into the details and the commitments and the implementation of what does the project look like, what are we committing to, with the community, and how does it actually get developed and built. And I guess, sort of starting with kind of our vision for the site, we really view this as sort of a reimagining at a very high level, replacing what's currently one building that's entirely vacant, a second building that is almost vacant and on its way to becoming fully vacant, and replacing that with what we think is appropriately scaled residential uses on the property that really fit in with the context of what's around us. This is a site that has a lot of challenges from a market standpoint. The office is vacant. We've looked at the market for office here. The existing owner, the prior owner, and now the current owner, which is a bank servicer, sort of shows you where the market is at for office in this area. We view some of those challenges as an opportunity to take what could be an eyesore in the community, a vacant office building, and find a way to turn it into a productive use that benefits the overall community. Really look at sort of the context, the connectivity with this site, connecting the development scale with the size, the scale, the uses around us, creating a variety of housing types, connecting pedestrians to and through the site, fixing some of the existing vehicular pressure points and frankly issue points with access to get into the Hunters Branch community, and really trying to connect the project in a more meaningful way with the Stream Valley. From a process standpoint, we do have a zoning application in that is running concurrent with the comprehensive plan effort that Aaron talked about, and what's really the primary focus for the meeting tonight. I will say we're very early in the process. We've had a number of initial meetings with different community groups in the immediate areas surrounding the property. But we really view this as still at a point where we're at the start of a conversation and really trying to get feedback that we can then incorporate into what we're proposing here to make sure we've got a really good project that is accretive to the overall community. So I think for tonight, from our perspective, really wanted to introduce the team and the project, but really focused on listening to comments and questions that we have. So we've got our full team here tonight. Myself and Mike Van Atta from McGuire Woods, our civil engineers, our architects and landscape architects, our transportation consultant, and also Maury Stern from Insight Property Group. And Insight, just for your benefit, is a DMV-based, Northern Virginia-based developer. Really does high quality work, but I think one of the things that separates Insight from other developers is really a focus on collaborative efforts during the zoning process, working with the community to make sure what's being proposed fits really well within sort of the community's expectations for a project. And so I did want to just let Maury introduce himself and Insight quickly, and maybe also give you a little bit of some background on how they've evaluated this site and looking at the existing office buildings and the viability of trying to reuse those buildings, and sort of how we got to the proposal that we're going to talk about in more detail.
Thanks, Scott. As Scott said, I'm Maury Stern. I'm one of the principals and owners of Insight Property Group. As Scott said, we're based in Northern Virginia in Arlington, exclusively do work in the DMV. So unlike a lot of our peers and other developers, we all live locally. We're focused locally on, especially Northern Virginia, the last several years. And as Scott said, one of the things that makes us different is that we really do spend the time to go through meetings like this and the meetings we've had previously and we'll continue to have on this project, and really understand your concerns and issues and wants in a project and make sure that they're incorporated as best we can. One of the projects that I like to highlight, we have many, but is a project on H Street where we built a very large mixed-use building with 448 apartments, a Whole Foods, some office space, and street retail in a community that has a long history of good and bad, and did not have a lot of history or want for large mixed-use developments. And so we spent a lot of time understanding, when we brought this big development to the neighborhood, what the community wanted. And the biggest thing we heard was that all around the city, these big buildings are built and they're for the residents of that building and not the communities they're in. And so at the building's called the Apollo on H Street, we took that feedback to heart, and our lobby is public, and anyone in the community, and anyone who wants to, whether the community or not, can come into our building. There's a coffee shop connected to it like a hotel lobby, and it allows the building to be part of sort of the community's living room and not just for residents of our building. So that's just one example. We have a lot of examples and can go into further detail if folks have questions, but we do spend a lot of time really listening to folks like you all in community meetings like this and incorporating that into our projects. And so sort of the background on how we got to this project and the proposals you see in front of you. We evaluated a number of opportunities on this site, as Scott mentioned, and as Aaron mentioned, and there are two before you in the SSPA, and option B is what we're talked through in a little more detail that's in our zoning application. But to get to that, we looked at first the obvious, which is two dying office buildings in what's happened across the country and across the DMV since COVID is the inability to lease big office buildings the way they used to. And so our first thought was, can we convert these office buildings to residential? And despite the fact that it feels intellectually like the right solution, office buildings aren't designed the way that apartment buildings are, and they're a lot deeper. They don't have the access to light and air in the middle that you need for apartments or living spaces. But with all that in mind, we still looked at what's the best way to make this economic, and so we evaluated keeping all the windows in place and just replacing them with operable windows. And even going through all those machinations, we still could not land on a way to make optimal living units in an office building. We could physically do it, but they would not be apartments that people would necessarily want to live in. They would not be ideal. So that kind of led us to the option A in the SSPA, which is two apartment buildings, one attached to the existing parking garage and the other where the office buildings land today. And then option B with townhouses or stacked townhouses on the office building site. And the reason we're moving forward with option B is that we think it really fits in more cohesively with the Stream Valley and the site, and really takes advantage of the amenity that Stream Valley is today and really what it can be as we improve it over time. And it allows us to kind of taper the heights of the development down and create better access into the stream valley and really integrate with the surroundings of the site. So that's sort of how we landed on the option we're proceeding with today. And Scott will dive a little deeper into it and explain some more details of the design.
Absolutely. And I don't know, Aaron, if you can flip forward, I think 2 slides at this point. Perfect. Thank you very much. So as Maury mentioned, we're trying to do a rethink of this site with primarily residential uses, creating a project that matches sort of the size, the scale, the uses, that's compatible with what's around us and really integrates into the existing built environment. As I mentioned before, really trying to focus on enhancing connectivity and the pedestrian experience, which would include completing sidewalk connections, making sure that we're adding street trees and landscaping to create really vibrant pedestrian pathways, and also creating new pedestrian paths through this property to connect to the rest of the community, but also down into the stream valley. Again, also trying to elevate the natural features on the site, and all of those things sort of led us to the proposal that's on the screen, which is the preferred option that we're moving forward on. I know you saw from Aaron sort of 2 options that were being proposed, and this one we felt like was the better option for this site. And so it includes a combination of multifamily apartments, so 485 units, and those will be rental units, and also 76 what are called stacked townhouses, and those will be for sale units. And stacked townhouses it essentially means it looks kind of like a townhouse, but it's actually 2 units on top of one another with a garage underneath. And those are, again, for sale units. So a combination of rental and for sale. As we talked about a little bit, the plan for this is to retain a portion of the existing parking garage on the site. So that's well, I guess I don't have access to the pointer, but I don't know, Aaron, if you can kind of circle where that existing parking garage is, and then building the multifamily around that parking garage so that it is screened from the street and the rest of the community, and creating an orientation of that building to really create a much better street frontage and a much better entry point into the neighborhood. The stacked townhouses will be served by an internal street network. All of those units will have parking garages, and they are rear loaded, which means that the parking is sort of off the street, and then in the back of the unit, and then the front side of the unit. So on Hermosa Drive and Hunters Branch, and also then on some of the park spaces, those will be the front doors of those units. Throughout the site, really focused on adding some of those pedestrian connections, but also with the stacked townhouses. Part of our approach is trying to work with the grade that's on the site. It slopes down pretty. Oh.
Excuse me. We know the plan here. We were just, when do we get to the point where we can comment? The people who live right next door.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for comments and questions. So maybe getting back to just the overall kind of site.
All right. So we know where to park. We know how townhouses are parked,
Yeah.
and we know how all that stuff is.
And I
Okay.
appreciate I appreciate the
you
comments,
understand?
but
it's getting a little long. Okay. And what we want.
and I promise you there'll be plenty of time for comments and questions sort of at the end of the presentation. Maybe just getting back to the overall sort of philosophy of kind of what we're trying to do is working with the grade of the site. So moving from the higher density multifamily, and then as the grade drops to the stream valley, putting in lower density, lower height townhouses, the stacked townhouses, so that you're working with the grade of the site, and you don't have giant retaining walls, you don't have a large multifamily building sort of looming over the stream valley. The other aspect, just to highlight, is we are proposing about 2,000 square feet of retail or restaurant use on the site. And that's proposed to be sort of at the end of Hermosa Drive, and you can kind of see where that is. It's kind of being highlighted right there. And if we can flip to the next slide. So the thought with that was really trying to create some community serving retail, making sure that we are providing a gathering space and an amenity to the people who live here, but also the broader community. And so we sort of envision that as a use that's about 2,000 square feet. It'll be built into the existing parking garage, which helps to alleviate some of the exposed frontage of that garage in that location. We envision it as a small coffee shop or eatery where you can come get a cup of coffee, get a sandwich. But really sort of tying that in also with a really well-designed public amenity space and sort of gathering space in front of that retail to make sure that you've got a good community gathering space, and it's a space that when we've been out there, we think is going to create a really nice environment and a nice amenity for the surrounding community. So we can flip to the next slide. So this just shows sort of the scale and what we were talking about in terms of trying to scale the project down from Hunter's Branch as you get down to the Stream Valley, and sort of lowering that density and really trying to be respectful of the environmental features on the site and the grade of the site. So we can flip to the next one. And this just shows a lot of the site connectivity that we were talking about. These are sort of all of the existing and proposed sidewalks and bike trails, and also the Stream Valley Trail. Again, trying to make sure that we're providing connections to and through the site, and really creating a site that is a part of the community that's designed to help get people, if they're coming from across 29 or across Nutley, helping them get to the metro or further into this neighborhood. Flip to the next one. So one of the things that we're focused on are creating improvements to some of the existing intersections and access points into the site. This is a highlight of Route 29 in Hunters Glen, which, as you can see on the left, in the existing condition, is really not a well-designed or well-functioning entry point into the neighborhood. It's pretty confusing for cars. It's frankly kind of dangerous for pedestrians at this point. And what we're looking at doing is trying to clean that up. So removing some of the ingress and egress points there, and tightening up that intersection, improving the pedestrian connections so that when you cross 29, you're actually landing in a safe spot as a pedestrian. And then also adding some open space in that area. So you're creating a nice entry point and landing spot. We can flip to the next slide. Route 29 in Nutley. I won't spend a ton of time talking about this, only to say that we're investigating a number of improvements to that intersection. We're in the process of kicking off a traffic study in coordination with FCDOT and VDOT to look at ways that we can improve that intersection. Some of the things we're looking at are a new crosswalk on the western leg of that intersection, potentially reconfiguring some of the lanes, adjusting the traffic signals, and enhancing some of the pedestrian landings to make them a little more safe, a little more functional. And those are things that'll be developed as the project moves forward and as that traffic study is completed. We can flip to the next slide. So this is our final slide. I know we're going a little bit long, but the urban park network that we are proposing, a combination of a lot of different elements, but really trying to create a unified park network on this site that'll be open to the public, and really we think will be an amenity to the public and hopefully well used. We talked about the pocket park that's right at the corner, sort of the gateway park at the corner of 29 and Hunters Glen. We talked about sort of the plaza area in front of the retail space. And then we've also got a connected area across the drive aisle there to another open space that we view as just a sort of gathering space, more passive recreation space. And then where the highlighter is right now, or the cursor is right now, sort of a larger, more active space adjacent to the stream valley. And that'll have, we envision, potentially play equipment, but really sort of more active than some of the other recreational amenities that are being proposed. We flip to the next one. And just quickly on the Stream Valley Park or the Stream Valley area, we're really focused on looking for what the right solution is, for that space. I think we've proposed a number of elements in terms of signage and sort of educational signage about the anatomy of the stream and sort of educational piece. Also looking at ways to improve the trail network back there. I think somebody pointed out in the chat that it's in rough shape, and we don't disagree with that. I think part of this is looking at what's the right solution for improving some of those connections, some of those trails. So I guess just to wrap up on our end, we're early in this process. We're looking forward to having these conversations, to getting feedback from the community, and really appreciate your time this evening.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I'll quickly try to go through this very quickly. Staff has already identified some considerations that we're looking at as a result of working with our partner agencies. So to start off here, this slide again is showing the different land units in the TSA and which ones are planned for mixed use development in blue, which are planned for residential only in dark gray there. And then the public facilities is the Metro Rail station platform. Basically, again, to keep in mind that the Vienna transit station area is conceptually planned for mixed use. There are relatively few locations within the area that are actually planned or remain available for mixed use development. Land units C and G contain mixed use plan recommendations. Those are shown again in blue. And the areas in gray are planned for a residential use between 4 and 5 and 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre, which is relatively low for transit station areas. Finally, land unit I, again, is the WMATA station platform. So despite the adopted plan and related approvals for commercial uses in land unit C and G associated with Metro West and the Pulte applications, only residential uses have been constructed in the TSA, with the sole exception being the subject site, which contains the only built commercial use in the area. And moreover, land unit G, north of the station platform, has been fully built out with residential uses, which precludes development of any commercial uses within that portion of the TSA north of the station. And if you drill down even further within land unit A, again, the site is actually the only commercial use again in the TSA today. And as a result, the potential loss of the only existing commercial use within the TSA is of concern to us. Some other considerations besides land use. Basically, this slide is showing an excerpt from the countywide trails plan, and what we're showing on the slide here is that the trails plan is showing a major paved trail is recommended for both the north and south sides of Route 29, and then on both sides of Nutley Street. And these photos are showing what the existing sidewalks look like. So the major paved trail is basically a minimum of 8 feet in width. And as you can see, these sidewalks are very narrow right now. They're nowhere near 8 feet. And then the transit-oriented development guidance also recommends things such as building forms that support employment centers near transit stations, including ground floor non-residential uses, and multifamily buildings support this sort of arrangement. Additional issues are how the proposed publicly accessible resource-based park at the corner of Route 29 and Nutley would be protected from traffic noise impacts, and how potential users would access the park and well, the other open spaces in the Stream Valley. The subject site again contains a resource protection area, floodplain, and possible environmental quality corridor associated with the Accotink Creek tributary. The Accotink Creek watershed plan shows a planned stream restoration project within the RPA, and the property owner should investigate a partnership opportunities with the county to accomplish this project. Since the site was developed in the 1980s without modern stormwater management controls, new development should include upgrades for water quality and quantity measures that exceed the minimum code requirements and reduce stormwater runoff from the site to good forested conditions. And this slide is also showing some of the potential circulation problems with possible dead ends here. And I've also circled the other open space areas besides the Stream Valley area. So the maximum multifamily option would generate a total of 86 new school students. Our heritage resources planners have recommended that a phase 2 architectural survey to determine any historical significance of the existing office buildings be performed, and stormwater management, or I should say sanitary sewer from the Land Development Services Department has stated that existing sanitary sewers do not have capacity to serve the proposed development, and additional capacity will need to be addressed during the other stages of the development review process. This table is just again showing the existing use. Again, I mentioned earlier that we're going to be evaluating the proposed plan against the current uses on the site, not the adopted comprehensive plan. So the office use noted here. So just the project timeline. The next meeting after this will be an introduction of the transportation study methodology, and we'll also review some draft plan recommendations that will be developed without transportation planning input. And then at a meeting after that is when in July, when the transportation analysis results will be presented. And then after we take those into account and further community input, of course, we'll come back with final plan recommendations at a final community meeting. And then these last 3 items are showing the staff report publication in September, and then the public hearings before the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors planned in October and November of this year. And the rezoning application process would be, or hearings would be following the public hearings for the plan amendment, as well as the publication of their staff report. And we anticipate those to be in early 2025. Okay, so now we'll open it up for any questions. Please use the raise your hand function and we'll unmute you, or you can unmute yourself if you have a question. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. This appears to be a fairly large construction. So if we execute the plan, how long the construction will take? And will the nearby residents, we will experience some constant noise even during daytime?
Yeah, thanks, Clark, for that question. Scott, do you know anticipated timeline for construction?
Yeah, and I may have Maury jump in on the actual construction timeline. In terms of like well, I don't know, Maury, if you want to jump in and just answer that in terms of
yeah, it'll be about a 2-year construction project, but probably not all of that will be what you consider loud noises. I mean, there will certainly be some loud construction, but the majority of the time will be a lot of interior construction, and then the apartments people will be living in them probably in month 20 or 21, and then the townhouses will be a shorter process than the 24 months for the apartments.
Okay, I guess the construction will begin with dismantling the current office building.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, it sounds like okay. Yeah.
Next up is, thank you for your question, Clark. Bob Kohler, go ahead. Bob, the floor is yours. Did you have a question? We'll go back to Bob if he can spec on. Next is Kristen Parker.
I'm a resident of these apartment buildings that are right next to this. So what I want to know is why are we adding more apartment buildings when there's 2 full complexes right there? Is there an option for these to be, condos that people can buy as opposed to just more apartments? Like there's 2 fully stacked apartments already in this area.
I can answer the question about condos. We're not a condo developer. That's just not what we do. We develop apartments. But I don't know which of the 2 buildings you live in, but both of those buildings have done very well and remain very occupied. And we think there's demand for slightly different, newer apartments as well. They kind of have a mix of types of apartments along with the for sale townhouses we're proposing.
I'm going to slightly disagree with you on that. I think this area, we need homes we can buy. Like we need homes we can buy as opposed to rentals.
Appreciate it. Just to clarify, the townhouses that we're proposing are for sale. The apartments are not. We just don't. We develop apartments. We don't develop condos, but the townhouses will be for sale.
It doesn't feel like enough housing for people. The need for homes for purchase as opposed to rental in this area is strong. Like I'm attempting to buy a house and I can't find anything because all that is offered is either $1 million homes or more rentals. And yeah, so that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is SP. Go ahead, SP.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to raise 2 quick points. The first on the portion of the property that is not appearing on the screen right now that is on the eastern side of Nutley Street.
We'll go for it.
I'd just like to respectfully suggest that it's currently pretty ignored, and there's a bus stop there with a lot of litter, a lot of junk scattered around there, and maybe one thing to consider is helping to clean that area up. I realize some of that's on the right of way, and it may only abut your property, but I have some property that abuts a right of way, and I maintain it. I'd respectfully suggest you consider doing something similar. My other question is, how many people are anticipated? I see the number of units, but how many residents do you anticipate under option A and option B? And then that follows into how many car trips, and you did show some anticipated how many new students, but then what are the road and school capacities versus the additions that you anticipate this development bringing?
I can start with that, SP, and I think maybe DOT has the trip generation numbers. So for this proposal, the option B proposal, which I think is the one that the developer is pursuing for the rezoning, it's 485 multifamily units, 76 townhouses. That equates to about 900 people, potentially, if you're applying kind of the county average of 1.75 people per unit. That might differ depending on the exact product type, of course, but that's kind of an estimate that we use for our own kind of demographic accounting. In terms of the number of students, I think Aaron had a slide on that. I think it's about 86 students that are generated. That's between elementary, middle, and high school students combined. So about 86 students. And then in terms of trip generation, I'm just going to flip over to Bob turned on. So I'm going to flip over to Bob about trip generation.
Yes, thank you, Graham. This is Bob Pecora with Fairfax County Department of Transportation. Will be working with the development team on their multimodal transportation analysis. And so far, what we have is that the existing building itself generates about 3,000 trips per day. But we're anticipating that with the option A, which is the 561 residential units, including about 76 townhomes, the trips will be reduced by about 350. So we're estimating 2,600 vehicle trips per day. And then in option B, which is all multifamily residential units at 800 units with the retail, we're looking at just over 3,200 vehicle trips per day. As I mentioned, there will be an analysis that the applicant team will be providing to us, looking at their existing conditions as well as future proposed with the alternative land uses that they're looking to do. So we will be reviewing those and making comments on that. We'll be presenting those at later meetings in this process.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. One, have we considered
Oh, I'm sorry, Clark. I think we had a couple of other speakers first. So I think the next speaker is Jody. Go ahead, Jody.
Hey, thank you. So as I looked at or heard about the possibility of this, what came to mind is more community participation as something similar to what was in Mosaic, where there's a gathering. And when I look at the plan here, a gathering place, and when I look at the plan here in the park, that little sanded area, first of all, it's very small. And the word community is being used, but looking at the picture, it looks very much like it's for the housing versus the community. The benefit of this from my perspective would be to offer more access to the community for that part of it, if it really is for the community. And, you know, the trails right now, if you look at the trails and all that green forested area, sometimes I'm not sure who's living there, and I don't really want to find out, especially late in the evening. But that will require some maintenance and some lighting if we do want to make even that park area accessible. So I'm not sure how this community aspect is being achieved, but from what I can see, it's more residentially targeted. And what are the plans to maintaining the trails or getting access to it so it does become more community oriented? Thank you.
Yeah, and those are great points, and appreciate you bringing it up. The plan is for all of these park spaces to be publicly accessible, open to the public, and hopefully, I think, well used and inviting for the public to come in and utilize the space. You know, you pointed out, you know, as well the Stream Valley and some of the trails there, and you know, we agree completely. You know, we feel like that's an area that needs a lot of work, and it's something that I think we're committed to figuring out what the right solution is there. I think we've already, you know, heard from a lot of other members of the community in terms of trying to clean up that space, make it a safer area with additional lighting, and some additional amenities and just better sort of trail access. And so that's something that we're absolutely committed to doing as part of this project.
And, you know, just to add, I do want to say that I supported that previous voice about more, I know you guys do apartments, but just to, you know, share feedback, I think more home ownership brings a different level of pride in community and ownership. different than rentals. It makes it very transient, the community. And then you kind of end up in this circle of not caring about the environment in a very different way. So just wanted to lend support for that comment earlier. Thank you.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate that. And just for everyone's benefit, for just background on Insight. So they are a developer, but they're also a long-term holder of their properties that they develop. So I think if you go to any of the properties that Insight has developed, what you'll find is because they're a long-term holder of the property, and manager of the property, they take a lot of pride in making sure that they're creating a sense of community and taking pride in that maintenance. And then you also have the home ownership. So you'll have 76 for sale homes as part of this project that also will have a vested interest in making sure this is a really successful and well-maintained community.
Thank you, Jody, and I appreciate your comments about the public park space as well. We're taking a look at that as well on the staff end. I think next up is Vanny. Go ahead, Vanny. Vanny, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question or a comment? Okay, we'll come back to Vanny. Ken Fife.
Hi. My question has to do, and I put it in the chat, but has to do with a reciprocal easement agreement. And I asked about this at our first meeting, but now that we have some county people on the Zoom, I'm curious because I'm not familiar with how these agreements get written. Is there a process that these agreements go through as they're being revised? Because I would imagine it's going to have to take some revisions because there's a lot of changes here we're talking about.
I'm going to defer to my DOT colleagues on that question. It's a good question, Ken, regarding the roads. Bob?
No, this is more than the roads. For example, the street lights are basically paid for under that reciprocal agreement along some of the common streets. And so it's more complicated and has a fair amount to do with residents like at Hunter's Branch and the other areas that are really not on your map.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And if we don't know the answer to your question, Ken, we'll definitely get back to you. But Bob or Mark, either of you know the answer to Ken's question?
Graham and Ken, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to have to find that out. So thanks for making that comment.
Yeah, Ken, if you would, we'll drop our email in the chat and we'll make sure that we can connect with you so we can answer your question that way. So,
okay, I appreciate it. It's kind of a curiosity thing, but
sure.
It's getting old and there's changes going on, and sometimes these agreements get forgotten about, and when really they need to be kept up to date and modernized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And just to weigh in sort of from the developer perspective, because I think, Ken, what you're referring to is the reciprocal easement agreement that's between the private agreement between all the property owners.
That's right.
On the site. And we're obviously, we've reviewed those agreements and are aware of them, and are working through what, if any, changes would be needed as part of those reciprocal easement agreements, and certainly coordinating with the other parties to the REA if there are changes that are needed. So it's something that we're working through. I think we also view it as an opportunity to if there are changes that are needed, to align that reciprocal easement agreement with the development that's actually occurred. Because as you know, those REAs were drafted sort of when most of this area was planned for office, and then you sort of had conversions to residential over time.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just anticipating that there will be visibility as to proposed changes and opportunities for discussing those changes in the future.
Yeah, and it'll be sort of between the parties to those reciprocal easement agreements. But yes, anyone who's a party to those agreements, will certainly be part of the conversation.
For example, the HOAs.
Yep. Correct.
Or did you have any other questions, Ken?
That was all I had.
Okay. All right, thank you. And we'll get back to you if we find out a little bit more information on the counties involved and if there is any in that particular easement discussion. Thank you.
This is Verdi.
Oh, go
You
ahead,
guys hear
Danny.
me?
Yeah,
You hear me?
we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, two things. I do agree with some of the members about having more home buying versus renting. And the other thing that what's the possibility for having more retail space? Ideally, I'd like to see more retail than one coffee shop, or maybe more, like some restaurants, something similar to the mosaic that we can implement in the space.
And I think we can address kind of the comments on the retail, because it's something that we looked at as part of the development program. I think the site struggles from a number of things that would support retail. Mainly, it just doesn't have good visibility from the surrounding streets, which is something that's pretty critical for a successful retail site. And in addition, you're competing. If this site was to be developed for retail, you'd be competing with the existing Pan Am Center and some of the other retail centers in the immediate area. But I think the bigger concern is that retail just would not be successful on this site just because of the fact that it has no visibility.
I somewhat disagree, though. I think there will be visibility, especially being by the metro station.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of where this site is located, it's not directly adjacent to the metro, which I agree could help to support retail. It's a little removed from being directly at metro, which just again hurts it from a retail viability standpoint.
Okay, if it's not retail, what about any restaurants?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we say retail, we're sort of encompassing kind of that, retail, restaurant, in sort of all of those various uses. I think as we've looked at the site, the proposal we've got for the retail or the sort of restaurant cafe area, I think based on our analysis of kind of the market, feels like about the maximum that you could have on this site that would be successful. I think our fear would be if we tried to force retail onto a site that it's not going to work, that we don't think there's a market for it. That becomes a detriment to the entire community where you've got vacant retail, which doesn't serve anybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Next up is Alan Gina. Alan Gina? Alan Gina, can you hear us? All right, we will come back to Alan Gina. Clark, go ahead. Clark, can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah, I hear you. For two follow-up questions. Have we considered converting the office building into condominium instead of dismantling it? That'll save a lot of construction work and noise and the duration.
So I think Maury covered this a little bit, but we did look extensively at trying to repurpose those existing office buildings for residential. The issue with residential conversions of office buildings, particularly, this site is the floor plate for that office building has to lay out for residential development. And as we looked at these buildings, to be able to get residential into these buildings, you would have to cut essentially a core in the middle of the building so that you had adequate light for those units. And as we looked at the types of units that would be created, they were pretty substandard units, even if you were to go in and try to make those significant changes to the office building, that it doesn't result in commercially viable units that you're going to be able to rent. And so that's kind of the analysis that we went through and sort of how we got to not being able to repurpose those and really looking at the sort of full reimagining of the site. And I don't know, Maury, if there's anything you wanted to add on that point.
No, I mean, to your question, that was what we thought was the right first step, was take these office buildings and convert them to housing. But it takes so much work and it probably almost more work, believe it or not, than building a new building. And because of what Scott said, you need to cut essentially a huge hole in the building in the middle to be able to get units that have windows and light. And the units are not ideal. They're really long and some narrow and weird curves in the building that make them not ideal. And we think what we're going to produce in this apartment building is much better apartments that are much more desirable than what we could kind of put you could actually put a round hole in a square peg, or square peg in a round hole by converting the office building.
Okay, then concerning the upcoming noise, what kind of rights the residents in this neighborhood will have? Say we have to tolerate the noise during the daytime, or what kind of see how that will be when the construction begins? Because nowadays a lot of people work from home, right? So I don't, yeah.
I mean, I can speak to, we've built many apartment buildings in very dense to not so dense, and obviously that's our biggest consideration, is making sure we're not disruptive of the neighborhood. I mean, I can't promise you there won't be times where there's noise, but we will do everything we can to be as the least disruptive, and we also like to have continual construction community meetings during the construction process and hear issues in those meetings and tell you what's coming up. But also, we're always open doors and email, phone call. If something's happening one day that's bothering you, we'll respond to it and do the best we can to minimize the impact it has on you.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Meanwhile, what are the typical remediation measurements typically would be put in place?
I can't speak specifically to it depends on the type of work that's happening, but you know, for demolition, there'll be screens and other things to prevent debris from this doesn't necessarily address your question of noise, but to contain debris, there are, you know, equipment that produces less noise than typical equipment that we use. But I unless we dive into the details of each phase of construction, I can't speak to all the different mitigation measures. And our contractor could speak a lot better to it than I could. I'm not a expert in construction, unfortunately.
Okay, allow me to ask one last question. Then how the construction traffic will affect the local people?
I mean, there certainly will be traffic, and we, like with noise, we will do everything we can we will have a plan in place for where trucks enter the site, where they leave the site, where they stage, and that'll be coordinated with the neighborhood to minimize the impact. But again, if things don't go as planned, we will respond and address them and adjust to have the least impact on you all as we can.
Okay, thank you for all the insights.
Thanks for your questions, Clark. Next is Sandy. Sandy, go ahead. Sandy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. There you go. Hi, how you doing? So I did have a couple of questions, and one was, what are the pros and cons of having the multifamily units to be bought versus renting? I think looking at statistics, it is well known that in fact, people that are renting are not going to be caring as much or taking care of the area and all that. And it seems like there is a shortage of apartments and things in the area that people can buy. I've heard many people talking about that, and they're going further out because they can't find them. And then also to compare it to the ones down the street that were sold that are condos that are high end. This would be lower end, but what would be the advantages and what would be the difficulties of making it that way versus renting it?
I guess I can start, and Maury, I'll let you kind of jump in as well, unless you want to.
Sure.
You want to start.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's so the condo versus rental market, it's a sort of separate segment of the overall housing market. And you know, as Maury said, you know, Insight is not a condo developer, and you know, is a multifamily developer. But you know, I'm not an expert on the condo market, but my understanding is when, you know, condo developers are looking at you know, these sites, it's tough to get those buildings financed right now, and actually get them constructed. I think the other piece of this is that there is a need for rental housing in the overall market. And you know, this is a project that'll help to serve that overall housing need that does exist. And you know, we are providing you know, a for sale option as part of the project as well, with
Oh,
the
you mean
stacked
that
townhouses and
the
trying to
apartment?
provide a variety of, you know, housing opportunities both for sale and for rent, and trying to do it in a way where, you know, we're trying to fit within the overall community. I mean, I guess I would dispute a little bit the idea that you know, renters are sort of I guess worse than homeowners. I look at the rental properties in the immediate you know, vicinity to this project, and you know, it's not a bad site or you know, or projects that, you know, aren't taken care of.
I guess the next question would be, how does this project here relate to the project that's going to be supposedly going on down the street in the Pan American Shopping Center, adding the same type of thing?
Yeah, it's completely separate from that proposal. In
Same.
terms of the timeline and where it's going to go. I think as we've, you know, evaluated it, just from a market standpoint, I don't know that one is going to impact the you know, the other. The one thing I will say is where we are coordinated is on looking at transportation issues and connectivity between you know, what's happening at the Pan Am site and what's happening on this site, because, you know, we're sort of a connection point you know, for that future development, you know, as folks are walking to Metro and sort of providing, you know, some of that connection to the broader neighborhood.
On this side, we have 140 units that are townhouses, and they were sold before they even were built. And there's a big demand, and they ended up being high end. Medium end would also be way, you know, I think, you know, people are looking to buy them, and it's younger people. It's not people my age. It's people in their late 20s, early 30s. That's the majority of the development here. So I don't know what statistics they're looking at, but they might want to relook at them because it was sold before 6 months before they even built the different units.
Yeah, and I think we agree that the, you know, the sort of stacked townhouses that are being proposed, you know, we think there's a really strong market for those as a for sale product. Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Well, just thoughts, and just the thought is, you know, I guess if an apartment is sold, is that considered a condo? Is that what the terminology is?
Yeah, so if it's essentially a for sale kind of multifamily, it typically is sort of a condo regime.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Last question was with the traffic. the traffic is already really challenging coming out onto Lee Highway. I don't know if they're watching or whatever, but if you're going to make a left out from that side or our side, the light does not change. The traffic on Lee Highway can be empty and the light does not change. And when you call them, they say, oh yeah, just drive your car back and forth over that area, and it'll change more quickly. Anytime that there is a power outage, which is pretty often, rain or not, and that power switches and all the lights are thrown off again to the other way where you're waiting there for 5 minutes to get out. So it is a hassle, it is a problem, and we don't even have that many cars yet. So it is something to be seriously looked at because people will not be happy with you, just to let you know.
So Sandy, just to make sure we understand, is that the Hunters Glen Way left turn on the Lee Highway?
Yes, and from my side, it's a left from, what is it, Wave, whatever it's called. From the Metro Row side, making a left on our side as well.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for that.
Well, good luck, and hopefully the right choices are made so that this can be a wonderful development and that you will be people will be looking for your next project because this can be a really positive thing, and hopefully it will be.
Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate it. Next is Smith. Go ahead, Smith. Is that Linda Smith? Smith, are you there?
Well, Graham, if Smith's not there, this is Al Gina.
I think Linda Smith is on the line. So go ahead, Linda. Good to see you. Linda, can you hear us? You're off mute, Linda. All right, we'll come back to Linda in just a second. Matt, you want to go ahead?
I will cede the floor to Linda if she can get connected to the audio. But two quick quality of life questions. How do the developers see the 87 or so school-aged children utilizing the space? Will there be playgrounds or areas to kick a soccer ball, etc.? You can go ahead and answer that. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I can answer at a high level, and we do have our landscape architect on as well who can sort of jump in on some of the details. But we are anticipating park space that'll have play equipment that'll be designed for the younger members of our community, for the kids that are going to live here, and also for kids in the neighborhood. And so that is anticipated as part of the project. And then the other sort of gathering spaces, the Stream Valley, we are looking at ways to orient that and make that a nice amenity for kids in terms of like an educational standpoint, particularly in the Stream Valley. So it's certainly something that we're programming those spaces for those anticipated users.
Okay, where on this map would those be located? I'm not necessarily seeing that.
Sure. Yeah. So the where it's highlighted there is that's where we anticipate sort of the play equipment and the more active recreation that is probably going to be more targeted towards the kids, and trying to locate that actually adjacent to the Stream Valley so that there's a good connection between that space and the Stream Valley, because we think there are really good ways to try and highlight that connection.
All right, excellent. And I guess the second quality of life question I had was, I believe that Metro West at some point was intended to have a pedestrian accessible grocery store, but it does not today. My understanding is that the Pan Am development is on hold for the indefinite future. However, that intersection of 29 and Nutley, I think everyone agrees, is not terribly pedestrian friendly at this point. So, is there any comment maybe from FCDOT on how the intersection at 29 and Nutley might be made more safe to allow residents to access the Safeway at Pan Am, or any of the other retail there that may be more commercially viable than integrating it within this site?
Yes, Scott and Maury, would you all want to take that first? And
Sure.
see if you
Yeah,
can
we can.
chime
Yeah,
in
we
as
can.
well?
We can talk
So
about
it's
that
been
first.
Matt, it's been a real topic of conversation,
Yep.
as you might imagine. So thank you.
I can bet. I can bet.
Yep. Yeah, and it's something that we're hyper focused on, that FCDOT and VDOT are hyper focused on. So we have a multimodal transportation study that we just kicked off for kind of looking at the overall transportation analysis for the project. But a big part of the discussion that we've been having is on what do you do at the intersection of Route 29 and Nutley, and trying to figure out what are the right improvements there, what can be done as part of this project versus sort of more overall sort of global improvements to the intersection. So some of the things we're looking at are enhancing the existing existing crosswalks that are there now, making sure those are more high visibility, making sure the landing areas are safer for pedestrians, looking at the potential for adding the fourth leg crosswalk that doesn't exist right now, but also looking at different things like the timing of those signals to make it a better environment for pedestrians. But it's a whole host of things that I think we're focused on and working with FCDOT and VDOT to figure out what are the right improvements that we can make as part of this project that make that a better and more functional intersection.
And the only other thing I'd add, Matt, is that at Hunters Glen Way, we're also working on making that a more pedestrian-friendly intersection as well, so that people can use that as well to cross Lee Highway and aren't forcing people to Nutley and 29.
Yeah.
There's hopefully multiple better ways to cross and get over to Pan Am.
Yep. And that's a really good point, that we are enhancing sort of that crossing at Hunters Glen, and then that connects into the multi-use trail that already exists on the south side of 29, and provides a connection to Pan Am.
And I might be misremembering where Hunters Glen is located today, but my understanding is that if you were to improve that intersection, that still wouldn't get you to Pan Am. You still need to cross either Nutley or 29 to access that commercial space. Is that correct?
No, you're absolutely right. I think what we're saying is that it's sort of getting you out of having to make two crossings at that main intersection. So it's a little bit of an easier crossing at Hunters Glen. I don't know if we can put the cursor on kind of where that is. And what that does, it connects you on the south side of the existing multi-use trail. And so once you get to the intersection with Nutley and 29, you would just be making that one crossing of Nutley rather than having to cross both Nutley and 29 at the intersection.
Okay. And when that study is completed, is that on the timeline? Forgive me, I have forgotten the slide. The transportation study will be part of this? Yeah,
so it's part of the combined comprehensive plan analysis and rezoning efforts. So it'll get completed during the review process, and then the results of that will get implemented into both the comprehensive plan language and the commitments that we have as part of the rezoning.
All right. Thank you very much, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to try Linda again. Linda, can you hear us now?
I hope so, Graham. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you. My question had been actually about the timing for some of the summer community meetings. Typically, associations don't meet over the summer because so many people are gone. And I'm concerned about that if you want real community input, particularly that traffic community meeting on July the 9th. Is there any way that would be possible to have that earlier before school's out so that more people would be more likely to attend?
That's a good question. Thank you for pulling that up, Aaron. So right now the study, and DOT can chime in here, but the study is still being scoped right now. I know some of the data has already been collected. So it may be tricky to get it in earlier. I mean, maybe there's with the initial submittal, there could be some additional information, but it may be that the information would come actually later, potentially in once school is back in session rather than earlier. But I'll double check. I don't know, Bob, do you have any particular take on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I was
where we
just,
are with the scoping of the study. Yeah.
right. I was just going to confirm with Graham that, yeah, we are, and
I'm on mute.
I don't know who that was, but the
Did you
the study is just about getting underway for the transportation study. We probably anticipate maybe the May 11th meeting would have a first cut at the transportation impacts, but we won't have the final results until sometime in the summer. I don't think July 9th would work, but you know, we can try to have something then. But Linda, to your comment, it might not be as early. We might have to actually push it back so that when people are back from their vacations, we can actually have that kind of a discussion.
I think that would be much better in terms of getting real community input.
Okay.
People do leave, and I know I'm going to be gone on July the 9th, so.
Oh, well, then we can't have a meeting without you, right?
Just to let everyone know, when we developed this schedule, it was before we had the transportation scoping document even. So we didn't have, you know, that this is really a tentative schedule and can be changed. So.
Well, please let us know what it would be, but I do hope that it's at a better time for the community to actually be able to join in.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, sounds good.
We'll take that into consideration. Did you have any other questions, Supervisor Smith?
No, that's it right now. Well, one thing, we always talk about density, but design is probably just as important. And given the constraints of this site, design will be even more important. But we also have to remember that these people do need all of those recreational facilities that we talked about at Pan Am. We're still short in the general area. So again, we all learned that with Pan Am, and it applies here too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Theodore Rangel. Go ahead, Theodore.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
I just had two main thoughts that I would like to answer. One of them was about the shortening or decreasing on the size of the entrance into the Glenway. I don't believe that entrance is by any means well, but increasing the amount of residents potentially, and also decreasing that entrance, is there any other like reformation to that entrance at all, or is it just going to be a shrinkage to it?
So I think we yeah, sorry, just trying to get off mute. So I think we view it as sort of a right sizing rather than just a shrinkage. You know, as we've looked at kind of the number of cars using that entrance, you know, particularly kind of in the existing configuration of the office building, it feels like it was overbuilt when it was originally constructed, in terms of the volume of traffic that it's creating. And so, you know, part of the study that we're undergoing will look at that configuration and make sure that, you know, it's designed to handle traffic appropriately. But I think at this point, just based on what we already know, you know, we think it's going to be a significant improvement to both vehicles and pedestrians coming in, and it is going to be adequate to serve the volume of traffic that's anticipated.
I certainly hope it does pan out to be well, but it just seems interesting because as of right now, I don't think there's too many traffic issues, but obviously with increasing residents, I would just have concerns about that because you're doing two things that might create like an influx into that and much more of a chokehold. But my other question was, or mainly curiosity, is you're not trying to do anything with the parking garage, correct? You said you're trying to mainly leave that intact and untouched.
So there's the existing parking garage on the site it is actually it's a massive parking garage and it goes down almost the extent of where we're proposing that multifamily building. And so what we're looking to do is actually retain a portion of the parking garage, which is kind of what you see on the plan that's on the screen. And then the remaining portion of the parking garage actually will get removed as part of the project.
Okay, so there are plans within the development to like modify it.
Yes.
Okay, but it's mainly just to make room for more of the housing and rental properties.
I think it's I would say I think it's part of the overall sort of relook at the project. When you come in Hunter's Glen right now, I don't know that having that exposed parking garage is sort of the great entry point into the neighborhood that we or others would like it to be. And I think the proposal that we've got here creates a much better entry function into the site, and also right sizes some of the parking. There's a massive amount of parking in that for that office building right now that is way more than even that office, if it was full, would probably be utilizing.
Yes, that was my concern, but that's I just wanted more information upon that just because I wasn't sure exactly where I was going. Thank you.
Thank you, Theodore. Next is Tijan. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Or Tian.
Hi, good evening. It's pronounced Tijan Ibar. Thanks very much
Thank you.
for taking this evening to share the details with the community. I do live in the community. I'm a homeowner in one of the condominiums there. I have one point and one question. We were talking about traffic, and that made me think about the two fairly recent traffic circles that are off of Hermosa and Nutley. And I don't know where that consideration, it wouldn't be part of your consideration, but a traffic meeting's consideration, since traffic would be increasing as well from that direction. And I find those circles already to be very dangerous, quite frankly. The question I have related to the property and the project is, now my understanding is there's going to be the rentals and then the townhomes, the stacked townhomes. So, and this builder would then build, and then would there be a rental management company within the apartment complex? And then what would they do with the townhomes? Would that become an HOA? How would that run? Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that. So yes, the apartments would be managed by, we don't actually manage apartments ourselves. We'll use a third party manager. I don't know if you may have been on earlier or not, but we do also own buildings long term. So even though we aren't managing it ourselves, we will be heavily involved in the day-to-day operations and supervising the management company. But then yes, the townhouses will be sold and be part of an HOA that will be formed, that will manage and govern that association.
Thank you. I have other questions, but I'll defer to the others that are waiting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Derek House. Derek, you have a question?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Graham and Scott and everybody else involved for your patience in all of this. At the previous meeting, I didn't notice this, but at the intersection for Lee Highway, Hunters Glen, and Hunters Branch. So say you bought a house in one of the split townhomes, and there's not really an exit leading via Hunters Branch towards Lee Highway, at least according to the current thing, other than doing a random UE there once you go right. So maybe reconfigure that in a way that allows your residents to exit both directions, just because I know for a fact Hunter's Glen Way is like a speed zone for people who are trying to catch the green light to turn left on Lee Highway, as well as the people coming in Hunter's Glen. But everybody does U-turns, even in our community, even though you're not supposed, like, so I just noticed that. So just to point that out. And then I know in the previous meeting you said that the park area over the corner off of Lee Highway and Nutley, over where may potentially be a dog park or a playground or whatnot. Just looking at all the trails and stuff, and there's a whole point about increasing the flow of pedestrian and whatnot. I think a good way to do that is to somehow connect that trail down there by the park to the corner so that people could walk through the trails from the corner instead of having to walk all the way around. And I know it's really steep there, but if there's some way we could figure out engineering stairs or a ramp to get down to the trails there, that would open up that area more publicly to everybody else walking. And that's all I had.
No, and appreciate that, and maybe just kind of looking at that corner quickly. The initial proposal that we had put forth, did identify that as a sort of a public park space. I think as we've sort of met on site with stakeholders and held other stakeholder meetings with the surrounding community and sort of heard about sort of how this space is used and some of the issues with flooding with in the stream valley, that we're sort of re-looking at how to use that space in terms of, is that the right spot for a public park? And it's something that we're kind of in discussion with sort of internally right now to see what's the best use of that space. The piece on the connection to the corner, it is something that we've looked at, but it's, as you mentioned, it's really steep slopes there. And the other issue is that you've got a lot of environmentally sensitive sort of constraints in that area with floodplain and resource protection area that limit the ability of kind of what we're able to do in terms of making that connection, which would likely have to be ADA, meaning it would be pretty disruptive to the environment getting down into the stream valley. And so it is something that we've looked at, but the trade-off of, even if we could sort of do that under the environmental requirements, the impact would be pretty severe in terms of what you'd have to do to address that grade and get people down into the stream valley from that corner.
As far as the environmental people, all you have to do to convince them is to essentially show them all the pictures of all of the invasive species down there. That whole area is just completely covered in invasive species. So you're not really resource protecting when it's all invasive species.
Yeah, no, we're aware of the invasive species, and that's part of our look at that of the stream valley is doing an invasive species removal program there to clean up that space.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we got a couple more hands raised. I think some of these folks we weren't able to hear from earlier, so I'm going to try again with Alan Gina. Alan Gina, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you please inform us how many parking spots in that garage? Considering you have 485 units, if you have 2 drivers per unit, will that garage accommodate the facility? And then visiting people to the townhomes, where would they park? And would that traffic overflow make its way into the rest of the residential area that's adjacent to it? And how would you control that? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a little bit tough to tell from the plan view, but even the portion of the garage that we're saving, it's a massive number of parking spaces. So in looking at the parking demand or the parking that would be required under the zoning ordinance, the overall proposal generates a need for 810 spaces. And that's satisfied in the stacked townhouses are each self-parked in terms of the number of parking spaces for each one of those units. And then there's excess parking in the parking garage. So we're providing 844 spaces. So we're sort of overparked from a zoning ordinance standpoint. And we envision that the parking garage would be where guest parking for both the residential units for the townhouse or the stacked townhouses would occur in the parking garage.
Thank you for that answer. And one last question. And it could be a swag, but I was taking some notes at the beginning about a policy plan, area plan, series of maps, and the planning goes into the zoning and the reuse plan. So can anybody on the call possibly give a date as to if this was all to go through, when do you project possibly starting demolition and / construction? Thank you.
If all goes as scheduled on starting construction, it's probably, plus or minus 2 years from now. Don't hold me to it, but that's, if things go as planned, it would start about 2 years from now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy, go ahead.
I'm so sorry I didn't take my hand down. I already did ask my questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Vanny, you have another question?
I do. You did mention that, obviously some of these properties have to be rental properties, and, you're not, you're unable to do condominiums and apartments as far as, for sale versus rental. Is there a possibility that the entire project can be townhomes instead of apartments that people can purchase?
So I think
I can take it. Good.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think as we look at the site and we look at some of the comprehensive plan, guidance and the location of this site in proximity to the metro, we do think that there's a need for a variety of housing options on the site. And frankly, there's a demand for both the for sale that's being proposed, but also for the rental that's being proposed. This is a site that is walkable to metro, and so traditionally we like to see higher density development kind of in that proximity to make sure you're taking advantage of that walkability to metro. But I think what we've tried to do here is balance that with the topography of the site and the need that we know is out there for sale product.
That's all I have.
All right, and let's see. I'm pronouncing this wrong again, I'm sure, but Dejan, did you have another question? My apologies. No. Okay.
Sorry, no, I don't have.
No, go ahead.
I don't have another question. I did put it in the chat, but it's not something that if you can answer it at your convenience, that's fine.
Could you point me to that one? Yeah, we have a couple more minutes. We'll stay on until 9, and I think there's been a lot of questions in the chat that we haven't gotten to, so we'll try to answer the questions that we can in the time that we have left. And then also we'll include our contact information in the chat as well. So if your question in the chat wasn't answered, during this time, we'd be happy to discuss it with you. If you would just send us an email, we'll be able to get back to you. But could you point us to the question in particular that you're asking about?
Oh, sure. So I was asking what amenities were going to be included. Would there be a fitness center, swimming pool, et cetera, for those apartments and townhouses?
I can speak to the apartments. You named some of the few, the obvious ones. There will likely be a pool, likely be a gym in the building, probably some community spaces for residents to use, and then a lot of outdoor spaces with grills, fire pits, things like that. The townhouses, you can see we talked about the playground area or kids area, but we're not yet farther along with any other amenities there to be able to speak intelligently yet about those.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any verbal questions that they want to ask? Otherwise, we can go through some of the questions in the chat. So last call. So I can go through a couple of the questions. We'll probably start from the bottom, just since it's right here. Vanny asked a question, I think it's probably for Mari or Scott. You mentioned there would be a cafe or some sort of a commercial property. Can we elaborate on that?
Sure. So I don't know if we can flip back to the slide where we kind of show that location. Yeah. So what we envision is either a coffee shop or sort of small cafe, restaurant type of use. We're looking at that as something that would be built into the garage frontage to sort of activate that space and really serve as kind of a community-based retail. So trying to draw from the surrounding neighborhood rather than sort of the broader community as sort of a destination. And then as part of that, we've also got an outdoor plaza that we're designing that we view as sort of having seating and really functioning as a gathering space for the community.
All right, next question is from Lilia is, how many stories will the building have and where's the entrance to the parking garage?
As far as stories, depending on where you are, anywhere from about 6 to 8, because there's a lot of grade on various parts of the site. And then I don't know if someone can point to there 2 entrances to the garage. One right there, and then one off of Hunter's Glen Way, almost opposite. Yep, exactly there.
Great, thanks. Q asked a question, I just joined. Will the slides be shared online? Yes, we will post the slides as well as a recording of this video on the project website. And so we'll provide that a couple of times. We'll provide a link to that website in the chat so everybody can take a look at it. Next question. Is the traffic study using updated data? Pan Am's was outdated and missed a lot. I don't know, Scott, would you want to speak to the traffic study, kind of the inputs and the counts?
Yeah, I mean, all of the inputs into the traffic study are things that are based on guidelines that both VDOT and FCDOT have in terms of the traffic counts and also what future development is sort of included in the background data for the amount of traffic that's anticipated. I think our traffic consultants are still on who can maybe talk to that in a little more detail, but I think the high level answer is yes, it'll include sort of current data on the current number of trips and then also anticipated trips in the future based on development that's happening around the site.
Yeah, Scott, if you can hear me, this is Mike Workowski. I'm with Wells and Associates. And yes, all the information we're going to use for the traffic study will be updated, and it'll account for, the existing traffic counts, pipeline development. I know there's been some comments that I've seen about background development, Pan Am Shopping Center. All those things will be updated and included in the study.
And a related question, Michael. regarding the crossing signals, have asked many times to have the crossing signals retimed at Nutley and 29 to favor pedestrians. Also to repave the crosswalks to be more apparent to drivers, maybe this time. So I guess the question is that specific intersection being looked at?
Yeah, so I mean, Nutley and 29, we, obviously heard a lot about it. We will be looking at the geometry there, the signal timings, the pavement markings, the timings for people to cross, going back and forth. There's also a question about reconfiguring the lanes. I saw somewhere that's really, working within the existing cross section and whether some of the lanes could be redesignated from what they're doing today. So we'll be looking at those things as well. All the aspects, really trying to design for all users at the intersection.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. We are at 9 o'clock. So I recognize that we did not get to everybody's question from earlier in the evening. We did get through the chat questions we had over the past 30 minutes or so. So I just dropped Aaron's email address into the chat. Aaron's the staff county planner that's working on this plan amendment. And we will be able to answer any questions that you email to us or contact the right people who can answer those questions. So I did want to just say thank you to everybody who attended this meeting. We got a good number of people that came out. This is also not going to be the only meeting that we do. So we will post additional updates on upcoming meetings that are going to take place over the spring, summer, and fall on various topics. And we'll also do additional notifications for those. So if you would just go to our website for the plan amendment. We'll have additional information on meetings and kind of next steps as we get further along in the planning process. So we'll also download the chat log, so we'll have a sense of the questions that came in. But really do appreciate everybody attending tonight, and I really appreciate the great questions and the good discussion on this. So thank you all, and also thank you to the applicant team for coming out, making yourselves available to answer questions about the associated zoning case. So thank you all, really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.